This is Pat Flynn. He's an acclaimed podcaster, book author, entrepreneur 6 times over, and an avid Pokemon card collector.
No way!
Growing up, Pat did everything right, earned perfect grades, landed his dream job, and then got laid off. But that crushing defeat was only the catalyst to his success to come.
If it wasn't for getting laid off, I think that was the moment. Despite doing everything the way I was supposed to, still getting it taken away from me, that was the thing for me to go, wait a second, like, is this really the path I should be on?
If you've ever wanted to be stronger, happier, healthier, or more productive, then you've likely tried starting new habits to support this better version of yourself. And starting is easy. That's the easy part. We've all started a lot of things. You just go. But how often do we actually finish? How often do we actually commit to what we say we're going to do? Why do we quit? To help us figure this out so we stop quitting, we have to uncover the pattern that all of us humans go through. Phase 1, realization. Something isn't quite right. Maybe you're gaining a little bit of weight, or you're not checking off your to-do list every day. Maybe you're just super stressed. You have so much stuff going on and you know you need to slow down, which leads to the realization that you need to make a change. But you know it's not going to happen overnight. You need to start a new habit, a practice to support this change that you want. As Aristotle said, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence is not an act, but a habit. And so you make a decision to start a new one. Phase 2, excitement. You're stoked. A new you is on the other side of doing this. So you prepare for it. And you might even spend some money to help support the cause. Those new shoes for the runs you're going to go on. That new journal that you're going to write in each day. That Peloton bike or the rowing machine that you've invested in. You're ready. You set clear goals. And it's this excitement that we all love the most, more than anything. The what ifs. What if I do look better? What if I do have less stress? What if I do start a new business? What if I did finally write that book? But you know, none of that matters until you start.
The pandemic this year, or this past year, has been really tough for a lot of people. And although it was for a different reason, I got let go during the Great Recession in '08 for, there was different kind of things happening. But like this past year, a lot of people got let go, and I had to go back to what it was like and remember what it was like to empathize with those who are going through that right now, as far as getting laid off and losing their jobs and not knowing what's going to happen next. And it really helped me make new connections with people this past year. And like yourself, a lot of people leaned into the opportunities that came about. I think that was the question I kept asking people, was just, well, what does this now make possible, right? We can always ask, well, how is this negatively going to impact us? And we often default to that. But I rather focus on, okay, well, although this is happening, what now might be possible? And those things have really things are happening for a lot of people as a result of taking advantage of that opportunity.
This video is for you if you've been laid off recently, or you know somebody who's been laid off recently, or perhaps you've gotten notice that you're going to be laid off or furloughed, meaning your job is at risk. Maybe you don't have a job anymore, and times are tough. And I wanted to shoot this video for you, whether you are experiencing this during the pandemic here in 2020, or perhaps in the future because of something else that happens that puts your job at risk. I wanted to shoot this video for you because I wanted to have you realize that you're not alone, that other people have gone through this too. And in fact, I went through it myself. Back in 2008, during the recession then, which was for different reasons, but a recession nonetheless, I also got let go. And I struggled, big time. I went through a number of weeks of depression and anxiety, panic attacks just happening in the middle of the day, not really knowing what was going to happen next, and frustration, anger, confusion, sadness, crying, all within the same day sometimes. And I wanted to speak to you because you might be going through something similar. But let me give you a little spoiler alert. Ever since that day I was let go, it's opened up more opportunities in my life than I ever knew existed. Now, 12 years later, I can honestly say that getting laid off, losing my job, the one that I spent years working toward, it was a dream job in the architecture space. Losing that job was the best thing that ever happened to me. It was a huge blessing in disguise. It was a big disguise, nonetheless, but it was still something that later on, looking back, I'm very grateful for. In fact, I celebrate my Let Go Day every single year. June 17th, 2008. I celebrate it. I celebrate it because that's the day everything changed for me. But initially, it didn't feel very good, like it doesn't feel good for you right now. This might sound a little funny, but there was only one thing in my life that was making me happy at the time, and it was escaping in a movie that I watched over and over again. It's my favorite movie of all time. I'm a little nerd, but hear me out. It's called Back to the Future.
I'm also a super fan of many different things. I'm a huge super fan in a similar way of Back to the Future. I have a ton of Back to the Future stuff. And what's really interesting about the super fan is they're so engulfed and so immersed in that space that people on the outside, they almost kind of think you're weird, right? However, if you're on the inside and you find other people who are into the same things, you kind of gravitate toward each other, right? It's so cool. And the cool thing is you can do this in your business. You don't need to be a celebrity, a musician, or part of a boy band to make this happen. You can just be you and offer value to your audience. And today I'm going to give you a very specific framework to how to go from the moment they find you to superfan. A superfan is somebody who will go to at bat for you no matter what. They're going to market for you without even asking. It's the cheapest marketing team that you could ever ask for, and the best one, because they're going to tell stories better than you could about your product and how that actually serves people. These are the people who are going to show up when trolls show up, right? Trolls and people who are like haters. These people will be on the front lines for you, and you probably won't even know those people exist because they have already taken care of them. And these are people who, if your brand were to change or to go down for some weird or odd reason, they're going to be sad. They're going to feel like a part of them is missing, right? And that's the feeling that we can have. And such cool stuff happens when you build superfans. For example, a friend of mine, Ernesto, who started out as a fan and we became friends since then, he created this art piece for me. He's from Mexico. This art piece is string on beeswax, an ancient form of Mexican artwork. And he decided to, because he knew I was a fan of Back to the Future, create this piece for me. You have people emailing you, want to support you when you have your new projects. This is Jeffrey, for example, who said, Pat, I know you have a book coming out very soon. I don't know what it's about, but I want to buy 20 copies for my friends and family. That's legit, right? And then you have people, so I have a podcast that comes out every Wednesday, Smart Passive Income Podcast. I miss my deadline a couple times, and when you have fans, your fans get mad at you. For example, Steven, when I was late for episode 112, said this. He's yelling at me. Where the is episode 112? Thanks, love your stuff, Steve. They get upset, especially when you consistently create content and they need that in their lives, right? More than that, you could gather some amazing communities together in person and now especially online. These are fans of the show who come together. I can tweet that I'm going to be at a restaurant somewhere and these people will show up out of nowhere, and it blows my mind still today. And I've even experimented in new niches using the strategy that I'm about to share with you, and it's working still. And in fact, this is more important now than ever.
The most common mistake you might make when starting a business is overcomplicating the whole thing, right? And it makes sense. Starting a business can feel very overwhelming. There's a lot of steps. It might be new to you. But if you've tried to start a business before and failed, or you've never tried to start because it feels too overwhelming for you, make sure to stick around, because in this video, I'm going to give you a very simple framework that's going to help you get results much faster than you ever could otherwise. Who am I? Well, my name is Pat Flynn. I help people start businesses. No, I don't help people become millionaires overnight, but I have helped people quit their jobs and start their own thing and live a much happier, more fulfilling life. I've helped people create side hustles that allow them to make more money and do more things than they would want to do otherwise. And I've been building businesses myself. I own several, from physical products to digital products. I speak on stage. I've written several books. In fact, one of my most successful books is about starting a business. Now, the issue with that book was it felt very heavy. It's 300 plus pages long. And in this video, I don't know how long it's going to be, probably under 10 minutes, I'm going to distill for you a very simple framework that's going to help you go from the start to getting a result. And that's where it all starts, because once you get that result, even if it's a small one, you start to build the momentum.
Fumble is a good word for sure, because I definitely dropped the ball a bunch of times and I've made a lot of mistakes along the way. But it was definitely something that I wasn't like, okay, now I'm going to be an entrepreneur. Boom, here we go. It actually was an interesting story because I had built a website as a study tool for myself and my coworkers, and that's it. And this was actually when I still had my architecture job. There was this very, very difficult exam called the LEED exam, which stands for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. I had just moved to Southern California from Northern California, which is where I went to school, and had an architecture job, and I went to a sister office in Southern California. And so I was building this resource essentially for the company to help us pass this exam. And after I passed the exam, it was just sort of sitting there and I had no more use for it. I was moving on to the next exam. And eventually I was going to get my architectural license and, do the thing. And June 17th, 2008 rolled by and I got laid off. And that was really hard because I didn't have a plan B. I actually was begging to get back into architecture. I had gone through a little bit of the MLM sort of, I had been asked to go to this meeting that eventually turned into this MLM thing that I eventually escaped, thankfully. But, I didn't know what I was going to do. And I'm very grateful that I've discovered podcasts at the time. And it was actually a podcast that changed my life. It was called Internet Business Mastery.
Community, in my opinion, is the future of business. Bringing people together to rally behind your product is really important. So here's the framework. It's called the Pyramid of Fandom. So if you imagine this pyramid as your overall user base, right? Every user who's come across your stuff ever, we start at the bottom. And this is your casual audience. These are people who've just found you. They found you through a Google search. They found you through a link or a retweet or a mention, or maybe they just heard you on a podcast for the first time. These are the people that maybe they don't know necessarily who you are or what you do, but something piqued their interest and now they're on the inside. And now it's our job to convert them from casual audience to active audience member. These are our followers. These are the people who now know who we are, what we do. When we come out with something, they're gauging whether or not they should interact. They're gauging whether or not they should purchase or participate, but they know who you are, right? Your followers on social media, your email list, etc. That's often where people stop. But we need to keep going up this pyramid next to the connected community. And this is where magic happens in the brand. This is where not just you're talking to them and they're talking to you, but people in that brand will talk to each other now. And whenever you can be the facilitator, create the spaces for people to come together, those people will now be that much more connected to your brand as a result of that. And as we often hear, people come for the content, but they stay for the community. Exactly. And then finally, some of those people will naturally become super fans, although there's some things we can do to nudge them up a little bit. Now, what's really interesting about this pyramid when you look at it is, actually, let me flip this over. This might look like something you are very familiar with, and I would imagine everybody at this conference especially. Traffic. You get a bunch of traffic coming over to your website. Some of that traffic turns into subscribers. Some of those subscribers turn into, of course, visitors on your sales page, and then some of them become customers. This is what's known as a funnel, of course, funnel. And funnels are so important because we can create automations and systems such that we can, like a funnel, just drip from the top and then boom, things pour out exactly where we want. However, the trouble with that is we often forget about the experience that a person has within that automated system. And my goal for you today is to have you walking away with some ideas on how you can create different experiences to heighten a person's interaction with you, your brand, your product, etc. So let's flip this over, right? We want to move people up. The cool thing about a funnel is it can be automated. We just pour from the top. Gravity does its work. The problem with this, though, is we're fighting gravity, right? This is not automatic. It's not 100% scalable. It's scalable, but not 100% scalable. And as we move people up, let me ask you, where do you think most of the lifetime customers are in this pyramid? At the bottom or the top? Where do you think most of the commenters are? The bottom or the top? Everything's at the top. So why don't we build for the top? Why don't we create experiences on top of our funnels that allow for people to come in and feel special, such that they will also invite new people in, and they're not going to invite people in who are cold. They're going to invite people in who now, as a result of that recommendation, are coming in warm already. So I've changed my entire focus from things like SEO and ads, which do work and are still important, to, for the people who are here, how do I make them feel great? How do I make them feel so valued that they can't help but share the brand, their experience, and me with others?
right around the time I was getting laid off from my job in 2008. I was an architect, thought I was going to do that for the rest of my life, got let go. And that was a really tough time for me. But this podcast I listened to really got me out of that rut and also onto a new path to discover what my superpowers were and how I could use the internet to grow something special.
And I just imagine that maybe one day there'd be a time machine that I can go into. I could hit 88 miles per hour, go back in time and change things. Maybe work a little bit harder, right? So I wouldn't be let go, even though I worked as hard as I could. Maybe choose a different career path. Maybe make my way to where all those important decisions were made that had this giant effect on the economy, and then I would save the world. But after that 1 hour, 56 minutes, it was the same. Back to reality. Back to no job, back to wondering about the future, back to wishing that Back to the Future was a real thing. And it wasn't until I discovered a podcast in particular, in fact, where I heard a very inspirational story of somebody who built their own online business, taking some knowledge they had about a particular topic, putting it up on the internet, and building an audience and selling product about that I then started to see that, well, maybe this is a sign, an opportunity for me to do something similar. So that's in fact what I did. I took some knowledge I had about an architectural exam. It's called the LEED exam. And I packaged that into a website. I sold a study guide along with it, not really knowing what I was doing or if it was even going to work, but gathering a lot of help along the way. And it worked. In fact, several months went by and I started to make more money on that website than I did as an architect. In fact, 2.5 times more. And looking back at the layoff, it was a moment after watching Back to the Future that I realized that this whole time I was focusing my time and my effort on things that I couldn't control, wishing things were different. And you know the funny thing about Back to the Future is that although it's a fictional story, there is some truth behind the way things work in that world. The idea that, Marty McFly went back to the past, changed a few things, came back to where he was, and everything's different. Well, we can't do that. But what we can do is change our behavior, our actions, and our responses to things now. We can start focusing not on the things that we can't control, but on the things that we can control. The things that we have access to, the things that we can still be grateful for. And it wasn't until I realized that did things start to change.
Because there are going to be things that happen in our lives that we just literally cannot control. There's nothing we can do about them. Things happen to us from the outside all the time. But then it's up to you to decide what to do with that, right? And of course, there are going to be, like you said, some things that just, grieving is fine. Like you have to do that. You have to cry sometimes. But there are also things that you can decide how you want this story to progress, right? It's like in Back to the Future. Although we can't go in a DeLorean and go back into time, part of that story was true. The fact that the things you did back then affect the things that are happening now. And we are always writing our story for the future at every single second, every single moment. It's like, what kind of story ending do you want? Do you want a happy ending or what? And it's going to be based on the decisions that you make right now. What's the story that you're telling yourself? And so many of us are telling ourselves stories and believing these stories when there's no proof, there's no fact. It's just emotion, and emotion is important, but sometimes it can get in the way of the logical progression that we should have.
The initial drive. You're not just all talk. You're walking the walk too, or in my case here, rowing the row. In the beginning, it's easy because it's new. You've got that new energy. You're so excited about it. You might even be so excited you want to let others know about it too. So what do? You might share about it on social media, and then people like it. They comment on it. So it fires you up even more. And that's awesome. There's nothing wrong with that. Accountability is fantastic. But starting is just part of the equation. Because even after just a short period of time, losing momentum. Now it's not so new anymore. And it's getting harder. The honeymoon period is over, and whatever you were excited about before becomes repetitive and boring. It's like a chore now. And you're long past the excitement of just getting started. Instead, you say to yourself, I have to do this again, and then again. And what eventually happens? You begin questioning the whole thing. So you start to slow down. You start to reconsider. The idea of giving up or just wondering whether it's all for nothing starts to creep in your head.
We know that when people read a blog, they might be reading for 5 to 10 minutes, and they're not reading all the words, but there's so many other blogs, distractions, advertisements, all those things sort of fighting against that attention. Think about YouTube. On YouTube, if you can hold people on your video for more than 5 minutes, you're doing really good. 5 minutes is good on video. And on social media, you post something, it might be 1 minute, and then all of a sudden that's gone. A podcast, when people listen to podcasts, they're listening for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours. So imagine the kind of relationship you can build and the trust that you can build with your prospects, with your customers, with your soon-to-be customers when you have that much time. Because like you said, it's the passive listening, and this is taking over the world. It's obviously very popular here in the United States, and it's actually going worldwide now. And it's because, like you said, you might be ironing. For me, I listen to podcasts when I'm doing the dishes or when I'm in the car or traveling. And this is the only kind of content that can get in front of people in those places. You can't or shouldn't be driving and watching a video at the same time. You can't be reading and driving, or reading a blog post and being at the gym running at the same time. It's hard to do that. But listening, oh, absolutely. But not only that, as a creator, it's great because one person can reach many people. There's directories like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. There's a lot of money being put into podcasting now, and it's just now starting to catch mainstream. But the cool thing is, to the listener, to the single listener, it's just like a one-on-one conversation.
Hey, let's play a game really quick. I'm gonna tell you a quick story about somebody who's experienced some rejection in their life, and I want you to see if you can guess who that person is. Ready? This kid in high school loved to play basketball, but he didn't make the high school varsity team his sophomore year. He also didn't play any other sports, and he joined marching band. He was rejected by girls 7 times and didn't get his first girlfriend until junior year of college, and that is none other than myself. But it was also Michael Jordan who tried out for the varsity team his sophomore year too, and actually didn't make it. This man was defeated for U.S. Senate twice and also for nomination for Congress and vice president until he later went on to become the 16th president of the United States in 1860. That's none other than Abraham Lincoln, Mr. $5. This woman was co-anchor at a Baltimore news station until she got fired 7 months later for having too much emotion in her stories. She later went on to become one of the most influential and most popular talk show hosts ever. This is, of course, Oprah Winfrey. You get a car, you get a car, you get a car! This cartoonist was fired for having a lack of imagination, only to later become a pioneer in animation and creativity. And now his name is on the company that owns most of our childhood, Walt Disney. The script for this movie was rejected over 40 times. It was written by a man named Robert Zemeckis, and it later went on to become one of my favorite movies, and the most popular trilogy of all time, Back to the Future.
How far you going?
About 30 years.
Back to the Future. Imagine if they'd given up. That's crazy. Like, I don't even know what I would do with my life. This author published a book in 2007 that was rejected 25 times before somebody finally said yes. It was actually the first business book I had ever read in my life. That book was The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. Now, the really interesting thing about Tim's story in that manuscript is that he asked that publisher who finally said yes, well, what's different that you saw in this manuscript that the others did not? And the answer he got back was, well, nothing. They said, we can understand why publishers have rejected this work, but we aren't betting on the book. We are betting on you. We believe you will do anything and everything you can to make the book successful. And Tim did just that. So what's the point of all this? I think the first point is there are no overnight successes when you really dig down into the success stories that you hear online. In all those cases, you're also going to discover that there's a lot of hard work and consistency. And the key word there is persistence. You have to keep going even through your failures. And truly, if you want to do something, you need to be the person to make it happen. Yes, external things are going to tell you that you're not good enough or that you shouldn't do this or shouldn't do that. But if you truly believe in what it is that you're doing, then keep going no matter what. So sometimes you need a failure. You need to get rejected. You need to get laid off. You need to get fired in order for you to realize that, hey, this is a pivot point for me in my life and I can go into my own new direction. I've experienced this myself too in 2008 when I was laid off from the architecture industry. And I'm so thankful that happened, even though I didn't like it at the time. I'm so thankful because it was a huge blessing in disguise. It really opened up my eyes to the new opportunities and the new lanes that I was going to go down in my life. So now before I let you go, I want you to do something for yourself, for me, and the rest of the community here. And that is to leave a comment and share an example about a time in your life. It doesn't have to be about business, but anything about a time when you persisted in your life. I think it's always great to reflect on just how strong we really are and the other people we surround ourselves with. So please comment below, share an example of when you've persevered in your life as well. I'll be in the comment section reading those and checking them out, and I might even pull a few of those stories out and feature them in a much bigger way in the future.
Choosing one specific niche to focus on. Any good business solves a problem, and the problem is when you try to build a business that solves everybody's problem, you're actually going to build a business that doesn't actually do anything at all. As I often say, the riches are in the niches. Yes, I know it's pronounced niches, but that doesn't rhyme as well. The beauty of niching down is that as you niche down, yes, you are removing people who you might be able to serve with a solution that will come later. But you're actually cutting through the noise. You're actually getting rid of competition, and you're more easily able to connect with those people. Considering a single platform to actually produce content on. Yes, you could focus immediately on providing a solution, but when you pick one content platform, it makes everything so much easier. Now, the hard part about this is by picking one, you're leaving all the others behind. And this is why people always want to start a podcast and start a blog and start a video channel and start a TikTok and an Instagram and a LinkedIn all at the same time. The truth is, again, if you choose all of them at the same time, you're going to end up nowhere. And consider it from your audience's point of view, people who want to connect with you because you have a very specific solution. If you're just showing up 10% on each of these platforms, why would a person follow you? It's choosing one communication platform. So you've got your niche, right? You've got your content platform that you've chosen, and now you got to pick a form of communication with those people to a point where you can send direct messages, right? Some platforms like Instagram, for example, allow you to connect with and communicate with your audience more directly. Some platforms like maybe YouTube and even podcasting don't allow you to do that very simply. So yes, this means that if you have a YouTube channel or a podcast, choose one social media platform to be able to connect with your audience on that platform and have direct messages with your audience, right? The direct messages will eventually come, and that's something you want to shoot for, because when you build these personal relationships, these one-on-one relationships, you can better understand who it is you're serving, and you can even utilize those relationships to help build a business off of, right? We are taking an audience-driven approach where we build the audience first from that niche that we chose on that platform and using this communication platform that we choose to then serve them with products, solutions, whether it's products that you yourself create or other people have and you earn a commission from. Choosing one monetization strategy, right? One form of monetization. Yes, there are millions of ways, maybe thousands of ways to generate an income online, but you could do anything from sponsorships and advertising to selling your own products, digital products, physical products. You could run events, you can run a membership community or a program that brings people in your space in. You can be a matchmaker and charge for that. You can do affiliate marketing. You can do so many different things to generate an income. But if you try to do all of them at the same time, again, the one thing is what we're talking about here. You're gonna have a much easier time. Find one person and get them a result. Because finding one person is so much easier than finding 100 or 1,000 people. But when you find that one person, you're gonna find the method to talk to and communicate and have that person be interested in what you have to offer. You're gonna be able to figure out what it's like to actually work with them and recommend things, and you're gonna see where the pushback comes from. You're gonna be able to better fill in the holes that you don't even know exist yet as you are helping that person through. And when you get that one single result, it changes things up here because you now have the confidence to go out there and serve more people like them, and now you also have a testimonial to go with it.
For me, the future is, and it's kind of here already, but private communities. To continue that conversation, we're seeing a lot of different companies come up that are allowing us to create communities outside of places like Facebook, outside of places like LinkedIn, places that you get to control, actually. It's very similar to, and I would still recommend also building an email list so that you can have a direct one-on-one contact with people without the walled gardens of Facebook algorithms and YouTube algorithms and Instagram algorithms. I mean, those places are still important, but we want to bring those people into a place where we can then nurture them and serve them.
Without a goal, you might run out of gas, right? Just like in the navigation system in your car, unless you're
knowing where you're going. You're kind of just driving around aimlessly, and you're going, but you might end up further away than where you actually want to end up. And so this is why in my book, Will It Fly, for example, the first few chapters are about you and where you want to go and what your path is. And that needs to be defined, or else why are you doing what you're doing? How are you going to guide your decision-making process?
You want to talk about like education and whatnot. I mean, I would educate ourselves on relationships, experiences, empathy, support, making people happy. And it's those skills like, factory type stuff. You see like now robots are taking over burger flipping joints and stuff. It's just like kind of ridiculous, but you can never outsource the soft skills, I think. And that's where I think you're going to want to connect with people on, the relationship level.